Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of the Urban Homesteading channel. If this is the first time you're visiting with us, we want to extend to you a very warm welcome and invite you to watch any of our over 560 videos that we've arranged for your convenience in playlists, as we are confident you're going to find something both useful and entertaining to watch. If you've been here before, welcome back. If today's your birthday, happy birthday. So today we're going to discuss one of the most common and maybe controversial issues relating to woodworking. If you have done any woodworking, watched any videos, you have heard a lot of opinions, and most of the time they're all slanted a certain way, and that relates: should you own a table saw? The table saw is built as the number one, the most important, and maybe the critical component if you want to be a woodworker, if you want to be a hobbyist, or if you want to make a career out of it. And clearly I have a table saw. So let's discuss today if a table saw is needed, if you should have one, or if it is something that you can do without. By far the most ambiguous tool in the shop is indeed the table saw. And here is mine, is an entry-level table saw that has served me very well. I'm very happy with it. I have zero complaints about it. And I've been thinking a lot the last few weeks if it is actually necessary. If I was starting today, would I buy a table saw? I did buy a table saw early on. It was a Ryobi, which due to sheer lack of knowledge I end up burning and damaging, and I replaced it with this one. So let's talk about the replacement, not the replacement, the saw that can actually do everything that this saw can do, maybe even better. So as I said already, I do have a table saw, and here is my table saw. In fact, this is my second table saw before I did damage my first table saw. And as you can see, it's a construction grade table saw. It's not a very expensive one. And that is because very expensive table saws, very good table saws, very larger table saws are both expensive and also extremely heavy, very hard to move around. If you have a small shop, not possible to have a very large table saw. And I think the size is the first thing we need to discuss. If we're talking about how important it is to have a table saw in your shop, and if you can do everything a table saw can do, we need to talk about what table saw we're talking about. Are we talking about a table saw like this, which is a very useful tool, don't take me wrong, or are you talking about a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 table saw? Sometimes are called cabinet table saws. It is an important distinction, because if we're saying, are there other tools in the shop that can do everything that this tool can do, we cannot compare the $5,000 table saw with the $200 saw and say the table saw is better. That is a nonsense comparison. So we need to know exactly what we're talking about, and we need to make a very fair and equitable discussion and comparison between those two. If you can afford a very expensive table saw and you have the space for it, by all means a table saw is a very useful tool. However, if you have a small shop like we do, a table saw that it is this size and it is mobile is both within budget and within reason. You don't need to go and spend a lot of money buying a table saw that you will not be able to put in your shop and move around when you need. If I had a stationary table saw in my shop, I wouldn't be able to use my shop, because it is important for my shop, which is about the size of a one-car garage. It is important that I'm able to move my tools around based on what I'm doing. So, can we use another tool instead of a table saw? Is there another tool that we can use that can do everything that the table saw can do? And there have been videos like that before. I'm not the first person to talk about this. And I'm going to deviate, because I'm going to say actually there is. And for the beginning woodworker, I would recommend another tool instead of the table saw as a must-have tool. And that will be the track saw. It is immediately obvious that the track saw is smaller, more compact, is definitely cheaper, and it can do everything the table saw can do. Absolutely everything the table saw can do. And I would say better than the table saw can do it. So let's discuss the advantages of disadvantages of both and see why I think a track saw is the most essential saw you should have in your shop, especially if you're a beginning woodworker. A track saw is a circular saw on track, and in my experience, it can do virtually everything a table saw can do. It is cost less money, it takes substantially less space, and I think it is more versatile and less dangerous. So I'm going to take this controversial position that a table saw is not as needed now that we have track saws that can be purchased for easily a half to a third the price of a table saw. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why people support the table saw? I think the table saw has become the badge of honor. If you're a woodworker, you have a table saw. That's what you do. However, if you're starting in woodworking, you want to buy the minimum amount of tools that you can in order to start in the hobby and build useful things. I can tell you that I do not use my table saw as much as I used to ever since I bought my track saw. And a lot of times when I use it, it's just a matter of convenience than anything else. A track saw will require a little more setup, that's true, and it requires a little more care. I'm not sure if that's true or not, because you do need a lot of care with a table saw, especially these entry-level table saws that their fences are not extremely robust, and you need to make sure that all the dimensions are correct. But sometimes I will reach for the table saw, that is true, but not because I found something that the track saw cannot do. Just a matter of convenience, something that I do have, so I do use. But if you do not have anything, if you're starting right now, I would say buy a decent track saw, preferably a plunge saw, not a set saw. I have two. I have an Evolution non-plunge saw and a Wen plunge saw, and I can tell you I use my Wen much more frequently than I use my Evolution, because I found the ability to make plunge cut really invaluable in using a track saw. So I would say, and I definitely recommend both the Evolution and the Wen. The Wen is a very inexpensive saw. I bought it for a little over $100. And with a track, you're talking about an investment of $200, $250. Much cheaper than even the least expensive table saw will cost you to get into the game. I would like to ask you, if you think of anything that you cannot do with a table saw, I would like to know. In the last few months, I've been thinking about making this episode. So when I'm building something, I'm looking at, is that something I cannot do using the track saw? Do I need to have a table saw for this? And to this day, I really have not found a single thing that I could not do with a track saw that I will need a table saw. Not one. That might change in the future, but for right now, I cannot tell you there is a single thing that I can do with a track saw that I cannot do with a table saw. And very often, I can do things with a track saw easier, better, and by far safer. You don't have to worry about certain things that you share with the table saw, with the track saw. You always need to worry and be conscious. I mean, it is a power tool. It can harm you, but it is, in my opinion, safer than a table saw. There is always a resistance in changing, and in woodworking, the table saw has been the staple tool for so many years that most every video you're going to find online, most every maker will support the concept that without a table saw, you cannot have a saw. That this is the end of all tools. I again disagree. I enjoy my track saw much more, and I'm going to show it to you. This is a very entry-level track saw that does amazingly good cuts. Very, very clean. It has everything you can. It plunges. It has it can do 45-degree angles. It has a very nice dust collection system. It really can do anything you can imagine and anything you want. I found it very useful. I reached for it, and I've reached for it in the last 2 or 3 episodes that we've done for sure. And the more I think about it, the more I find this tool very important. The only limitation that I can see at this moment is that this has a smaller radius blade compared to my table saw. So some material I might not be able to cut through. And maybe ripping might be a thing that the track saw cannot do right off the bat. but I think you can easily make a jig to do that as well. But other than the dimension of the blade, I think, and the possible exception, that one thing, ripping boards, which in general the table saw is not a good tool for anyway. It is a dangerous cut, and you are much better off ripping using a bandsaw than using a table saw. So even in ripping, the table saw is not a good tool, so we cannot say you should have it for ripping over a track saw, because it is not designed to do that kind of cut. And when I'm talking about ripping is taking a board and cutting it in this dimension, so making two flat boards out of one. You can do it with a table saw, of course, but it is not recommended, and it's something that you could build easily a jig to do with a track saw if you so choose. Now, why people still talk about table saws and why people really look down on track saws, I really don't know. I think the track saw is so versatile. You can easily move it around. If you go to a friend's house to help them build something, you can use the track saw. You don't have to lug around the table saw, even though this specific table saw is portable and you can take it around. If you can afford both, right now I'm on the fence. I don't even know that I will tell you if you can afford both, buy both. I will say buy a track saw, because I know you will be able to use it, versus a table saw. And then if you see that there is some unique thing that requires you to buy a table saw, then buy a table saw. Again, for this discussion, we're talking about contractor grade table saws of this size, of this shape, that are portable. Again, the bigger table saws with very fancy fences, with the ways of move material easily, with ways of very safely managing seat goods, are a different story. But this saw, the track saw, is a fantastic saw for very big seat goods, 4x8 seats, or any dimension you want. It does a very good job effectively without requires a lot of space. So when you look at the benefits of the track saw, it is smaller, it is cheaper, and allows you to do virtually everything the table saw can do. I am not sure why we're still recommending, especially in the beginners, to buy a table saw. I think that if you're starting now in woodworking and you want one saw, that should be a track saw, not a table saw. It will be much more versatile, will allow you to do virtually everything you want to do. And if you're a beginner anyway, you're not going to rip boards in half. You're not going to do that. That is a higher skill and a dangerous thing to do with a table saw anyway. It requires you to be much more skillful. So I'm not really sure it makes any difference if you're starting. So my recommended number one tool, or number one saw to have in your shop is in fact a track saw, not a table saw. I hope you found this episode useful, and if you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you didn't, the other button works as well. Share, like, subscribe, and let me know what else you would like to see in our channel. From Dr. Wizard and the Urban Homesteading channel, wash your hands, put your masks on, vaccinate, and stay safe so we can see you in the next episode. Stay safe, friends.